The market opens in 4 minutes. You have already been here long enough for the coffee to turn cold. At 23, you still think this world is about salary, prestige, and surviving the week. Then you look up, and you realize money is only the surface. Power lives somewhere higher. This is your life at every level of financial power, and the cost of getting closer to it. At level 1, you do not make decisions. You make decks, clean models, and disappear inside the numbers. Your debt is real, your sleep is not. The paycheck feels huge until you see what your superiors make in a morning. You learn to read filings faster than most people read headlines. Speed becomes your first form of value. One morning, you catch an error buried deep in a senior model. It is worth millions. You fix it quietly. Not because silence is noble, but because silence is safer. At this level, the system does not reward honesty first. It rewards usefulness, endurance, and discretion. You never meet the client. You never see the boardroom. But your numbers travel farther than you do. That is when you learn the first truth. The machine is built on people nobody remembers. 2 years later, you are still not in control. But now, at least, you are in the room. You do not just process deals anymore. You help structure them. You explain risk scenarios with a steady voice because you rehearsed every failure before anyone else noticed it. Preparation becomes your currency. Precision becomes your shield. Then comes a deal that works perfectly on paper and badly everywhere else. You are not asked to model the human cost, so you do not. You model margins, coverage, and return. The bonus arrives. The questions leave. That is how rationalization enters the bloodstream. And you learn the second truth. Proximity to capital means proximity to decisions you would never admit were yours. At level 3, you stop counting hours. You count live deals. You manage analysts, review associates, and absorb pressure before it reaches the client. Your name is not on the front page of the deck, but in the room, the hard questions now come to you. That is the shift. You are no longer support. You are part of the mechanism. You see the ethics more clearly now, but clarity does not stop execution. A deal closes because the numbers work, even if the consequences land on people who never entered the room. You tell yourself the outcome was inevitable. Maybe it was. Maybe that is why the system survives. The third truth arrives quietly. At this level, good is irrelevant. Executable is enough. Now you are not just closing opportunities, you are sourcing them. Clients ask for you directly. That changes your posture before it changes your title. You start selling something more powerful than analysis. You sell confidence. Information becomes leverage. Not public information, timed information, positioned information. You know who is reviewing options before the market does. You know who is accumulating before disclosure says they are. Then you lose a mandate, not on merit, but on access. Not because your numbers were weak, because someone else belonged to the right room before the meeting began. That is when you learn the fourth truth. The deal is never just about the deal. By level 5, the calls start before sunrise and end somewhere over another time zone. You manage relationships now, and relationships are revenue with names attached. You are no longer working for the institution in the normal sense. To several clients, you are the institution. A credit decision lands on your table. The fundamentals are weak. The relationship is too important to lose. So the decision becomes political first, financial second. You travel through Zurich, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, and London, and eventually the dinners matter more than the decks. Because capital does not move on return alone. It moves on trust between the right people. And that brings the fifth truth. Relationships are not adjacent to the business. They are the business. At level 6, your incentives change shape. The annual bonus becomes small compared with the cycle. You stop thinking in quarters. You start thinking in fund lifetimes. You lead a consortium. Multiple jurisdictions, competing bids, more regulators than introductions. The structure is legal, efficient, and engineered with precision across several vehicles nobody outside the room will ever remember. The transaction works. The returns improve. Your upside multiplies quietly in the background. Your social world narrows. Not from isolation, but from selection. The people around you increasingly have one thing in common. They control capital. That is the sixth truth. Once you share the upside, you start seeing the world as a structure to position inside. Now the phone on your desk connects you to people who do not react to markets. They steer them. A sovereign investor wants deployment. A ministry wants perspective. Both call on the same morning. You are not chasing the market anymore. Your positioning is part of what the market measures. When you lean in, prices move. When you pull back, people start explaining why. You advise boards, development programs, and public institutions. Nobody calls it lobbying inside the room. The consequences become too dispersed to feel directly. The return stays simple. So the return wins. At this level, there is no outside perspective left. You have become one of the lenses through which power sees itself. That is the seventh truth. Influence becomes most dangerous when it no longer feels personal. At the final level, the title almost disappears. Only the name remains. You hold positions across funds, banks, vehicles, and committees that rarely appear in the same sentence. Few people know the full extent. Fewer need to. You do not trade events. You arrange yourself where events will eventually arrive. When the stress comes, your structure is already there, waiting. People call it foresight. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is simply access compounded over decades. The real cost is not stress. It is distance. Fewer people you trust. Fewer people you can explain your life to. And that is the eighth truth. Beyond a certain point, power no longer feels like power. It feels permanent, cold, and difficult to leave. Then the room in Geneva goes silent. 4 people. No agenda on the table. No need for one. You speak for a few minutes. The room listens. Then the room moves. And somewhere, far below all of this, another analyst logs in for the first time. He thinks the system rewards effort. Soon enough, he will learn what it really rewards. The market opens. The screens come alive. The machine takes another step forward. And the ladder stays exactly where it has always been. Above you, inside you, and waiting.